Hey, I've got the campaign brief ready, built from last quarter's data and the competitive landscape.
Approved. Oh, agents, where would we be without you?
Somewhere with a lot more tabs open.
Create your first Monday agent in minutes at Monday.com.
Hey listeners, this is Peter, and welcome back to the History Shorts. Today's episode is brought to you by the Podcast Republic, your ultimate listening app. Discover and subscribe to thousands of podcasts from around the world. Download Podcast Republic today, available on Google Play and the Apple App Store. Today on History Shorts. In February of 1692, in a household of Reverend Samuel Parris in Salem Village, Massachusetts, a woman named Mary Sibley asked the minister's enslaved servant to bake a cake. The recipe was unusual. Rye meal, ordinary enough. The urine of the afflicted girls, less so. The cake was fed to a dog. The theory behind this procedure was that the dog, having consumed the urine of the bewitched children, would itself become bewitched. And by watching the dog's subsequent behavior, the community might identify who had cast the original spell. It was called a witch cake. It was a piece of English folk magic imported to Puritan New England, and by most accounts, it was the match that lit the fire. Within days of the witch cake, the first formal accusations of witchcraft had been made. Within months, Salem had hanged 19 people and pressed one man to death under stones. Within a year, the hysteria had collapsed as suddenly as it had begun, leaving a community to reckon with what it had done for the rest of its history. Our history brief today introduces our newest segment, Everyday History. Today, the history of ketchup. A quick word from our sponsors.
Everyone treats summer like it owes you happiness. Long days, pool parties, your best life on a loop. So what does it mean when you feel worse? The summer blues are real. It's why summer is one of the busiest stretches of the year for people starting therapy. Therapy is not only for when you're in crisis. Growth therapy is for all the moments when you decide you want more. More support, more clarity, more tools. Mental health isn't a destination you reach. It's something you build, and Grow makes that easier. Grow connects you with thousands of high-quality licensed therapists across the U.S., offering both virtual and in-person sessions, nights and weekends. You can search by what matters, like insurance, specialty, identity, or availability, and get started in as little as 2 days. There are no subscriptions, no long-term commitments. You just pay per session. Grow helps you find therapy on your time. The therapist you want takes your insurance on Grow. Grow accepts over 125 insurance plans. Sessions average $21 with insurance, and some pay as little as $0 depending on their plan. Visit growtherapy.com/booknow today to get started. That's growtherapy.com/booknow. growtherapy.com/booknow. Availability and coverage vary by state and insurance plan.
This day in history. On August 11th, 1929, the Kellogg-Briand Pact officially took effect. Signed by dozens of nations, the treaty sought to outlaw war as an instrument of national policy. Though it failed to prevent World War II, it remains an important milestone in the development of international law. On August 11th, 1934, the first federal prisoners arrived at Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary, transforming the island into America's most infamous maximum security prison. Story of the day. The afflicted girls, the figures at the center of the Salem crisis, were not strangers to hardship. Petty Parris was 9, the daughter of the minister. Abigail Williams was 11, his niece. In the weeks before the witch cake, both had begun exhibiting symptoms that alarmed everyone who witnessed them. Fits, convulsions, contorted postures, screaming, the sensation of being pinched, bitten, and choked by invisible hands. The village doctor, William Griggs, examined them and offered a diagnosis that was in the vocabulary of 1692, entirely coherent. The evil hand, he said. Witchcraft. What was actually happening to Betty and Abigail and to the other girls who soon developed similar symptoms has been debated by historians and scientists for more than 3 centuries. The theories range across ergot poisoning from contaminated rye grain to encephalitis from a viral outbreak to conversion disorder brought on by extreme psychological stress to deliberate simulation. The most honest answer is that no single theory has been proven to everyone's satisfaction. What is clear is that whatever was happening to the girls was real to them, and real in its consequences to everyone around them. The witch cake was baked by Tituba, an enslaved woman from Barbados who had been brought to Massachusetts as part of Samuel Parris' household. Her precise origins are debated. She was long described as Native American, but is now understood by most historians to have been African or of African descent, brought from the Caribbean. She knew things that the Puritan community around her did not. She knew folk remedies, counter magic practices, the kind of practical supernatural knowledge that circulated in the Atlantic world of the 17th century. Knowledge that was not witchcraft in the malicious sense, but that looked, to Puritan eyes, dangerously close to it. The witch cake was Mary Sibley's idea. Sibley was a neighbor who suggested the remedy. Tituba and her husband, John Indian, executed it. When Reverend Parris discovered what had happened, he was furious. Not because the cake had been baked, but because in Puritan theology, using counter magic to fight witchcraft was itself a form of trafficking with the devil. You could not fight evil with evil's tools. The witch cake had, in Paris's view at least, opened a door that could not easily be closed. He may have been right, though not for the theological reasons he believed. The accusations began almost immediately. Betty and Abigail, under pressure from adults demanding to know who had bewitched them, named 3 women. Tituba herself, Sarah Good, a homeless, socially marginal woman who made her neighbors uncomfortable, Sarah Osborne, an elderly woman who had not attended church regularly. 3 women on the margins, precisely the kind of people communities throughout history have found easiest to accuse. All 3 were arrested in late February of 1692. What happened at Tituba's examination was one of the most consequential moments in the entire crisis. Tituba confessed. She did not merely admit to witchcraft in a general sense. She confessed elaborately, describing the devil appearing to her, a book of witches' signatures, familiars, a red cat and a black cat, a conspiracy of witches operating in the community. Historians have long debated why she would confess. Coercion is the most likely explanation. She had been beaten by Paris before the examination. But her confession also fit a pattern. Those who confessed in Salem generally survived. Those who maintained their innocence were more likely to hang. Whatever her reasons, Tituba's confession transformed the crisis. It confirmed the community's worst fears. There was a conspiracy. There were more witches, and now they needed to be found. What followed from February through September of 1692 is one of the darkest chapters in American colonial history. More than 200 people were accused. 19 were hanged on Gallows Hill. Giles Corey, an 80-year-old farmer who refused to enter a plea, was pressed to death under heavy stones over the course of 2 days, the only execution of this type in American history. 5 more people died in prison. The accused came from every level of society, eventually including the governor's own wife, which may have contributed to the crisis' end. By October, Governor William Phipps had suspended the Court of Oyer and Terminer. By May 1693, the remaining accused had been pardoned and released. The machinery had stopped. The damage was permanent. The reckoning came slowly and incompletely. In 1706, Anne Putnam Jr., one of the primary accusers, made a public apology at her church, stating that she believed she had been deluded by Satan and expressing remorse for the suffering she had caused. In 1711, Massachusetts legislature reversed their initial decisions and awarded reparations to survivors and the families of victims. In 1957, Massachusetts formally apologized for the trials themselves. In 2001, 309 years after the executions, the state legislature finally and formally exonerated the last of the condemned by name. Historians have produced dozens of explanations for what happened in Salem in 1692. Ergot poisoning, social conflict between Salem village and Salem town, the trauma of King Philip's War, and the fear of native attack that still haunted the region, the particular psychology of Puritan theology, its insistence that the devil was active in the world, and that affliction was evidence of spiritual warfare. All of these factors were real. None of them fully explains how a community of neighbors came to hang 19 of its own. Mar- Mary Sibley, who suggested the witch cake, was publicly rebuked by Reverend Parris in March of 1692. She confessed her error before the congregation and was then forgiven. Tituba, who baked it, spent over a year in prison. Paris refused to pay her jail fees, effectively abandoning her. She was eventually sold to an unknown buyer and disappears from the historical record. The dog, well, the dog who ate the witch's cake, the animal whose bewitched behavior was supposed to reveal the witch, left no record either. Whether it behaved strangely after consuming what it had consumed, whether it revealed anything at all, or whether anyone even watched this dog afterwards. Well, the sources do not say. The dog ate a cake made from urine and rye, and then the world came apart. The History Brief. Walk into almost any restaurant in America and you'll find it sitting on the table. French fries, ketchup. Burgers, ketchup. Hot dogs. Well, that's a debate we'll save for another day. But anyway, it's one of the most common condiments in the world. But here's the strange part. For most of its history, ketchup didn't contain a single tomato. In fact, the earliest versions didn't even come from Europe. The story begins more than 300 years ago in Southeast Asia. Sailors and merchants encountered a fermented sauce known as ketchup, likely originating in what is now southern China or the Malay Peninsula. It wasn't made from tomatoes at all. It was salty, fermented fish sauce, somewhat similar to modern fish sauce used in Thai or Vietnamese cooking. British sailors loved it. The problem was that they couldn't easily make it back home, so they improvised. Throughout the 1700s, British cooks began creating their own versions using whatever ingredients they had available. Some ketchup recipes called for mushrooms, others used walnuts. Anchovies were also common. There were even recipes made with oysters. The one thing they generally didn't include was tomatoes. So, why, you may ask? Well, because many Europeans thought tomatoes were poisonous. The fruit belongs to the nightshade family, and wealthy Europeans often ate from plates that contained lead. The acid in tomatoes could leach lead from the plates, making people sick. Naturally, they blamed the tomatoes. It wasn't until the early 1800s that tomato ketchup finally appeared. One of the first published tomato ketchup recipes came from American scientist James Mees in 1812. His version included tomatoes, spices, and brandy, but it still looked and tasted quite different from modern ketchup. The real breakthrough came later in the 19th century. In 1876, a businessman named Henry John Heinz introduced a new recipe. Instead of relying on artificial preservatives, Heinz used ripe tomatoes, vinegar, sugar, and careful bottling techniques to create a safer, more consistent product. His ketchup became enormously popular. Today, Heinz sells hundreds of millions of bottles each year, and for many people, its recipe has become the taste of ketchup itself. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today and helping make this little show such a mighty success. If you're enjoying this show and would like to help with its production, you can always donate a few dollars at buymeacoffee.com or become a Patreon member to enjoy these episodes ad-free. Both of those links can be found on our website at www.historyshortspodcast.com. Also, don't forget to check out our YouTube channel where we have different videos and series that are not part of this main feed. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you all again tomorrow.
This summer, turn your gifting game up during the Summer Plant and Garden Sale at 1-800-Flowers.com. Right now, you can score up to 30% off succulents, bonsais, fresh-cut blooms, and more. Whether you're celebrating a birthday, sending a thank you, or a just-because surprise, 1-800-Flowers lets you save big on a stunning selection of gifts. Save up to 30% off during the Summer Plant and Garden Sale at 1-800-Flowers.com/podcast. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/podcast. Gift something unforgettable today.